This is the Garden of English. I'm Tim Freitas, and today we're going to talk about what do we do to get kids to get used to time, and what are we going to do to kind of potentially help get them to retain a little bit more information over the long run. So, check it out. Okay, as I work with teachers around the country, one of the questions I get the most is how do we get kids used to exam timing? And I'm going to just give you a couple ways that I do it. It's not dogma, but I do encourage you to just consider such things. The first way that I do this is I time everything from the beginning of the year. And what that means is that if it's an assignment in class, it's going to be timed. Now, the thing is, though, is that especially at the beginning of the year, because I also go very slow, I'll talk about that in a minute, I do give kids way more time than I think actually is necessary. In fact, if I think that they should do something in 8 minutes, because that's what tradition has actually kind of dictated to me or my experience over the years, I will tell the kids at first that they have 16 minutes. And the reason why is because that time frame of setting up some sort of time limit when they're not used to it already begins to increase the anxiety just a little bit. And then as the year goes on, I will lower the time frame to something where I think it actually begins to put a little bit of pressure on. And a lot of times too, what I'll do is if I set a high time frame and they're all done within a certain time, let's say I set it for 16 minutes and they all finish by 12, I'll say, all right, folks, next time we're going to do this in 12 minutes. And then I will move it hopefully down to 8 as the year goes on. So I've got this gradual time frame where there is an expectation to get things done in a time setting, but it's extremely realistic, if not overly generous at first, and then we start paring things down throughout the year. So that's the first way that you can actually get kids used to timing on the AP exam. The next thing that I can also suggest that I also do, which is going to sound weird because it's going to sound contradictory, is this: go slow throughout the year. I do not rush through anything. In fact, what I do is I try to make sure that the skills that kids have are foundationally set all the way through February before I really start putting pressure on kids. So what that means is that sometimes I'll spend extra weeks on rhetorical analysis if they're not getting it. We'll write more of them in class together, slow, maybe even untimed before we do their first timed writing, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I want to make sure that the skills are built and revisited at least twice before I start really putting a lot of time pressure on, because once the kids have confidence in their skills, adding time on later or stricter time constraints later will allow them to actually work much better. It's kind of like when my son was learning how to play soccer, and at first he had to learn how to kick the ball with the inside of his foot because he wanted to kick it with his toe. So he would stop, he would think, he would turn his foot, he would then kick the ball, and then he would move to running again. Now, when he plays soccer, he can actually run and kick at the same time. He'll kick with the inside of his foot instead of his toe, and he can do it all fluidly. But the reason why, though, is because he took the time, and we took the time to really slowly get that muscle memory in. So now he can do it fluidly within the time frame of the soccer game in high-pressure situations. We want to do that with our kids. For me, my students don't actually write even their last of the time writings, which is synthesis, that's the last one that I do, until the middle of January. So that means that they've only done 3 timed writings till the middle of January. Now, from February on, we'll do plenty more. But I will lay those firm foundational skills in class first, make sure that they have tons of practice with that, so that when the time frame comes, when the time constraints come, they're going to actually have confidence in their skills because they will have the skills. So I'll put a little bit of timing pressure on from the beginning of the year as we do things. However, right, I'm not going to put tons of pressure on until I know that they actually have the skills. Let's talk about timed writing. When my kids write their first timed writing, for one essay, I give them 84 minutes. Now you might say, I don't have that time because I only have the kids 1 period a day and they're 40 minutes. Good. Then give them 2 periods to do it. They start on one day, they finish it the next day. Now you might say, but what if they go home and what if they research these things? Good. If you have them handwrite and they've researched other good papers and they try to put that in their paper, that means that they've read it, they've thought about it, they've actually processed it in their mind, and they've actually then tried to reproduce that in their own way. That is interacting with the content. So they have a semblance of a time frame. They are trying to do their own research, and sure enough, they are actually trying to articulate it themselves. Now, you might say, but we're hybrid this year because you might be watching this during a COVID year, or we're online. Well, in that case, if you're worried about kids just copy and pasting, at least have them handwrite when they do their timed writings, even if they do it over 2 periods. Because if they were to even copy and paste, right, which I hope that they don't do because that's cheating, but even if they were to, if they handwrite it and take a picture of it, at least they read a good paper. It's gone through their eyes, through their brain, and back out their hand, so that they've at least had the attempt of working with that skill and considering it and cognitively processing it, as opposed to just pressing Control-C and Control-V. But in the actual school years, right, I do this with my kids all the time. I'll start them one day, I'll let them finish the next day, and I'll even tell them, go home and research all you want. You can have all the notes that you want, but it has to be done within this time frame in front of me. Another thing about the time frame is this. On their first time writing, I will tell them, you have to write the full rhetorical analysis essay, but you also have to write a thesis for an argument prompt at the same time. So I do add one small added task. So when they write their argument timed writing, I tell them, you got to write your whole argument essay in 84 minutes and a thesis and a body paragraph for a rhetorical analysis essay and a thesis for a synthesis. So notice that I'm actually adding tasks, but I'm not shrinking the time yet. And then when they write their synthesis timed writing, I will actually give them a full 80 minutes to write a full synthesis essay, and then they get to choose a thesis and body paragraph for argument or rhetorical analysis, and then they have to do a thesis for the next one, but for the one that they didn't choose to write the thesis and body paragraph for. And this typically happens around, that last step typically happens around mid-January. And then at the end of January, I actually give them a mock exam. I use the applied practice mock exam, by the way. I think that they do it really, really well, and they'll score it for you, and it's only like $12 an exam. It's great to budget for. But anyway, so nonetheless, those are some of the ways that I actually deal with timing in my classroom and how to get that done. Now, I want to just bring up one other point of advice here. A lot of times we want to think about students' skill retention. We've got a lot of things that we have to cover. How can we get kids to retain things? And this year I actually started something new that has been incredibly effective. And my AP music teacher at my school actually encouraged me to do this. He said, you know, when you give kids their AP exams or whatever you're doing to prep them for their AP exam, in this case it's timed writings, he said, why don't you let them actually have the opportunity to rewrite them as many times as they want until the next timed writing? And I was like, oh yeah, right. Why would I ever want to do that? I'd have so much more grading to do than I already have as an English teacher. But sure enough, he was like, if you just score it after the first time you put comments on it, then you're really not actually going to spend that much time grading it again because you're not going to put comments on it. And I was like, oh my word, that's right. And how long did it take me for actually score a paper on the 1-4-1 rubric? It takes me 2 minutes. So now what I've done is I tell all of my students, whatever your score is on your timed writing, you can rewrite it up until the next timed writing. And it's going to be the same prompt. It's going to be the same essay. So if it's the same, if we do rhetorical analysis and they just wrote about Florence Kelley, they're rewriting their Florence Kelley rhetorical analysis. If we're doing an argument prompt and they're talking about whether or not the Gaber prompt, I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh yeah, whether or not entertainment can ruin society, then that's what they're going to be writing again over and over and over. And what happens is the students that actually want to do this right and do this well, I tell them, here's your first draft back with all my comments on it. I will not comment again, but you have the opportunity to rewrite, and you can do whatever research you want. You could talk to whoever you want in the class to help produce a better paper the next time. And then they'll come in, and because I'm typically after school, I'll say, here's when you guys can come in and and rewrite your time writing after school. You can use all your notes, you can use your first draft, but you still have to do it in that time frame. Here you go. And they'll write it, and they'll hand it back to me, and then I'll score it, and it does not take me a lot of time. And the kids that really want to do better will indeed have the opportunity to do better. And because of that, they'll retain their skills even more. And now you might say, but they've already read the piece. Another thing that I do actually is after their timed writing, I'll even go over it as a class, and I'll say, here are the rhetorical choices here, or here's what you could have done for your examples in your argument prompt, or an AP Lit, I'll say, here's what this Lit piece was about. But sure enough, folks, what happens is when the kids have thought about this, when they go to write it the next time, they're like, oh yeah, I remember him saying this, meaning this, but they still have to articulate that. They still have to articulate their reasoning and commentary, and because they're revisiting these things, they're revisiting the skills that I'm trying to get them to process, and it becomes easier the next time. And I've done this only this year, but every single time that I've done it, I have seen incredible growth with the kids that have actually embraced it. And so that's just another piece of advice that says, hey, I'm not trying to suggest that you add more work to your plate, but it's really not a lot of work, and it really helps with the retention and kids' skill growth. So just some advice from me to you. Hopefully it can allow you to chill just a little bit as we move into the next half of the school year, which, May is going to come soon enough. If this video was helpful, I'm going to ask that you just click like and subscribe. If you have any questions about the content here, drop those right in the comments. I'll try to answer them, perhaps even with a different video. You can always find other ways to support the Garden of English. One of them is to pick up some of the merch that we offer. You can find those links right down at the bottom in the description. You can also follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram as well. And until next time, we'll see you when we see you. Have a good one.